The first warning did not come from a radar screen or a government speech. It came from silence. On a clear morning, satellites stopped talking. Weather maps froze in place. Navigation apps spun and spun like lost compasses. In hospitals, backup. Systems clicked on. In airports, pilots held on the runway with no clean guidance from above. For a few minutes, people blamed a software update, a solar storm, anything normal. Then the night side of Earth lit up with a thin, pale line dot. It was not a comet, not an aurora. It was too smooth, too steady, like a circle drawn with a ruler around the planet. As the Earth turned, the line stayed in the same place above the atmosphere, following the curve of the world dot in a control room filled with tired engineers. Mira Cole stared at the main screen until her eyes hurt. She worked for a quiet tracking network that watched space debris and nothing important. At least that was what the public believed. Her job was to notice the small dangers early. This was not small. The line resolved into shapes, hundreds of objects, evenly spaced, holding, positioned without drift. Their surfaces did not shine like metal. They swallowed light. They looked like chunks of night, carved into sharp angles, each one the size of a building. Someone in the room whispered, "That's a wall." Mira did not answer. She zoomed in and saw details that made her throat tighten. Tiny lights moved along the structures, like ants along a bridge. Some of the objects linked with thin beams, forming a connected ring. Not every piece touched, but they moved together, keeping perfect distance. A blockade. On the second day, the message arrived. It came through every working radio band at once. Clean and calm, as if it had always been there. A voice spoken simple, flat English, with no accent and no emotion. "Earth, this is a quarantine line. Your orbit is closed. Do not launch. Do not approach. Do not interfere. Your planet will not be harmed if you comply." Then the voice added a sentence that did more damage than any weapon. "You are not ready for space." The broadcast repeated. Every 10 minutes, some leaders wanted to answer with anger. Others wanted to beg. Most wanted time. But time was a luxury that vanished quickly. By the end of the week, the world felt smaller. Cargo routes shifted. Markets shook. The loss of satellites broke quiet systems that nobody thought about until they were gone. Timing signals, long-range weather prediction, safe ship routing, disaster monitoring. People looked up at night and thought they could see the ring, even when clouds covered it. And above the ring, something else moved, farther out than the blockade. Larger shapes waited. They were not in low orbit. They stayed at a distance, as if they were watching a test. In a meeting room under thick concrete, a group of scientists and officers argued until voices became thin and sharp. On the wall, a giant model showed the blockade ring like a collar around Earth's neck. "Any launch is intercepted," an Air Force general said, tapping the model. "They don't even fire. They emit a pulse, and the rocket dies. It falls back into the ocean. They are not killing people. They are making a point. They want us trapped," a diplomat replied. "If we push, we invite real harm." A space engineer leaned forward. "This is not just defense. It's control. They pick the safest altitude to block, where our satellites live and our launches must pass. They didn't need to bomb cities. They just turned the lights off in the sky." Mira sat near the back, not important enough to speak often, but she had watched the patterns. She had watched the gaps. There were gaps in the ring, tiny ones, like seams. But every seam was covered by sensors, and every sensor was backed by another, a perfect net. Then a naval officer, Captain Lena Reyes, spoke in a quieter tone that forced people to listen. "They want us to fight on their terms," she said. "A clean space fight. Big rockets, big targets, easy to see, easy to stop." A few heads nodded. Reyes pointed at a second model, smaller, almost ignored in the corner. It showed Earth, the moon, and the space between. "So don't fight there," she said. "If they own orbit, then orbit becomes a bad place to be. We move the battlefield." The room went still. A politician frowned. "You mean attack their ships above the ring?" Reyes shook her head. "No, we don't chase them. We make them chase us." Mira felt a cold spark in her chest, the feeling of a door opening in a locked hallway. Reyes continued, "They made one mistake. They think space is the only high ground. They forget what humans do when they are cornered. Humans dig. Humans hide. Humans build cheap things in huge numbers. Humans use the weather, the sea, the ground. They can't blockade the ocean. They can't blockade a mountain. A scientist tried to object, but their technology is powerful. Reyes agreed, and also confident. The ring is a fence built for rockets. It is not built for every ugly trick we can invent. Mira finally spoke, voice steady only because she forced it to be. Their sensors are tuned for heat and thrust. She said, they track launch signatures, they kill rockets, but they don't know everything that can reach the edge of space. Someone asked, like what? Mira looked at the model, at the thin line that claimed the sky, and at the planet beneath it, full of storms, deserts, forests, cities, and deep oceans, like things that don't look like a rocket. She said, Reyes nodded once, sharp as shore. And we don't need to break the fence today, she added. We just need to make them step away from it. The diplomat rubbed his forehead. How do we make an alien fleet step where we want? Reyes pointed at the moon, then at the space between Earth and it. A quiet corridor in the dark. We give them a reason, she said. A signal, a target, a problem they can't ignore. Mira understood then what the real war would be. Not a war of missiles and explosions first. A war of attention, a war of choices, a war of forcing the enemy to react. Outside, people still lived their normal lives as much as they could. Kids went to school. Trains ran. The sun rose. But above them, the ring held steady, cold and patient. In the bunker, the human plan began to form. It was not a plan for glory. It was a plan for survival. And deep in the silence between Earth and the blockade, Mira imagined something simple and dangerous. If the enemy wanted to keep humans on the ground, then humans would turn the ground into a weapon. The quarantine voice repeated again, calm as a clock. Do not launch. Do not approach. Do not interfere. In the meeting room, Reyes answered the error, not into a microphone, but into the future. That we won't launch, she said. Softly, we'll make you come down. Earth did not announce a counterattack. There was no dramatic speech, no flag waving in the wind, no promise of revenge. The world had learned something in the first week of silence. The ring in orbit was not only a weapon, it was a trap for the mind. It made people stare upward and feel small, so Earth stopped staring. In the same bunker where the first plan had formed, Miracle watched new data arrive in broken pieces. It came through cables, through ground stations, through old systems that did not depend on satellites. The alien ring still choked the sky, but it could not choke everything. Captain Lena Reyes stood near the wall map, arms crossed, eyes sharp. She did not look angry. She looked focused, like a surgeon about to cut without wasting motion. They're calm. A commander said. They still repeat the same message. They still avoid killing. They want obedience. Reyes nodded, and they want us predictable. Mira spoke without raising her voice. The net is perfect for rockets, she said, but they are not watching the ocean the way we do. Some people in the room glanced at her, waiting. The ocean hides heat, Mira continued. It hides sound. It hides movement. A rocket launches loud and bright, but not everything needs to launch like a rocket. A senior engineer leaned forward. You're talking about a different path to the edge of space. Yes, Mira said, a path that looks like nothing. The plan changed shape over the next days. It became 3 quiet projects running at the same time, each one small enough to deny if it failed, and together strong enough to hurt the ring if it worked. The first project was called Fog. It was not a weapon in the normal sense. It was a cloud. In shipyards and old factories, teams took scrap metal, ground it into fine dust, and mixed it with a special coating that could hold an electric charge. The dust was packed into capsules the size of fuel barrels. Each capsule had a simple timer and a small gas charge, nothing high-tech, nothing flashy. The idea was simple. Put a cloud in the wrong place, and even a perfect sensor would start to lie. The second project was called Needle. These were small drones, thin and plain, built for speed and surprise. They were not meant to survive a long fight. They were meant to appear, create confusion, and vanish before the enemy understood what they saw. Needles did not carry big explosives. They carried cheap tools, cutters, signal jammers, and small impact charges that could damage sensors and external cables. They were built like insects, and like insects, they were meant to come in swarms. The third project was called Lantern. Lantern was the most dangerous, because it was a lie that had to look real. Earth needed the aliens to move. Not later, not eventually, soon. Lantern would be a false target in space, a signal that looked like a hidden human station or a new weapon platform or something else the aliens feared. It would be placed just beyond the ring's normal comfort zone, far enough to pull attention, close enough to feel urgent. The room argued about Lantern for hours. They'll see through it. Someone said. They might. Reyes replied. But if they don't look, we lose anyway. Lantern isn't about fooling their intelligence forever. It's about making them react once. Mira watched Reyes as she spoke. Reyes did not chase excitement. She chased control. Reaction gives. U.S. timing, Reyes said. Timing gives us a window. We don't need to break the ring with force. We need to break its balance. Outside the bunker, the world was learning to live with less. Pilots flew with older methods. Sailors used stars again. Farmers watched the sky with their own eyes, not a satellite forecast. People complained, then adapted. Humans always did, and under the ocean, something else moved. A submarine slid through black water, without lights. It was not alone. 3 more followed at distance, each one carrying seal tubes that did not look like missiles. Because they were not missiles, Reyes stood in the control space of the lead submarine, holding a strap as the ship rolled gently. Depth, she asked. Steady. The navigator said. We are below thermal layers. No clear trace. Mira was not on the submarine. She stayed in the bunker because she was more useful with screens that with steel walls around her. But she had helped design the timing. She had helped calculate where the ring's sensors were strongest and where they were weakest. The submarine captain's voice came through a secure line, faint but clear. Fog package 1 is ready, he said. Rey's eyes narrowed. Release on my mark. Up above. The ring drifted in perfect formation. It did not drift in the way human satellites drifted. It held position like it was nailed to space. The alien ships in higher orbit stayed distant, watching on a large screen. Mira tracked the ring's skin pattern. She saw pulses like breathing, sweeping arcs and repeating cycles. A perfect machine rhythm. Now, Reyes said, under the ocean, a tube opened. A capsule rose, quiet, pushed by compressed gas. No fire, no bright exhaust. It climbed through, water like a bubble, then broke the surface far from any coast. For a second, it was a dark shape against the dark sky. Then it fired a tiny, clean burst of gas and jumped upward. It did not roar. It did not burn like a rocket. It simply climbed, fast enough to reach thin air before it could be tracked with normal rules. The ring noticed. Something, a sensor node pivoted, a beam scanned. The capsule split open. A cloud of dust expanded into space like smoke in slow motion. It spread along a predicted path, turning into a thin veil. It was almost invisible to human eyes, but to alien sensors it was like sand thrown into a camera. On the screen, Mira saw the first sign of stress, a flicker in the ring's tracking grid. Fog is in place. The submarine captain reported. Reyes did not smile. Good, again. More capsules rose from different oceans, different angles, different timings. Each one released another drifting veil. The ring's response changed. At first, the ring ignored the fog. It kept its pattern, confident, steady. But the fog did not need to stop the ring completely. It only needed to create noise. It only needed to make the ring doubt. The alien pulse beams began to adjust. The skin rhythm shifted slightly. Not much, but enough for Mira to see it. They're compensating. Mira said to the room, their system is changing its sweep. Meaning? A commander asked. Meaning they feel it. Mira replied. They don't know what it is yet, but they feel it. That night, Lantern began. From an abandoned high-altitude base, a large balloon rose into the stratosphere. It carried a compact transmitter, powered by batteries and a simple reactor core taken from an old research program. The transmitter did not send human radio signals. It copied the pattern of alien communications that Mira's team had mapped. From the quarantine broadcast, it whispered into space in the enemy's own language, using their own rhythm, not words, not a challenge, a signature that said, something is here. On the bunker screen, the data stream trembled. A new beam from the ring snapped toward the signal source, then another. 2 sensor nodes rotated, scanning hard in higher orbit. One of the larger alien ships shifted position, just a small move, but it was the first time it had moved since the blockade began. Reyes leaned closer to the display as if she could pull the ship with her eyes. They noticed Lantern, someone said. Mira's hands went cold. They're watching, she whispered. And then the quarantine message changed for the first time. The calm voice that had repeated the same words for days now added a new line, Earth. Unauthorized activity detected. Cease immediately. Reyes spoke into the quiet room. Her voice low and steady. Good, she said. Now we know they can feel fear. Mira stared at the ring on the screen, at the small changes in its perfect pattern. The enemy was still strong. The fence still held, but it had started to bend its head to look. And when a powerful enemy starts looking, it means they can be guided. Far above, the alien ship moved again, turning slightly toward the lantern's signal. It did not rush. It did not panic, but it moved. And Earth, hidden under oceans and mountains, adjusted the next timing like a hand setting a trap. Because Earth was not trying to break the blockade by climbing over it. Earth was trying to make the blockade come down, and the first step of that war was already working. The alien ring did not break. It adapted. After fog spread its thin veils and lantern whispered its false signature, the blockade tightened like a fist. Sensor nodes turned more often. Scan beams swept faster. The quarantine message repeated. With a harder edge, unauthorized activity detected. Cease immediately. Earth did not cease. In the bunker, Miracle watched a new pattern form on the screens. The ring was changing its rhythm to protect itself. That was expected. What was not expected was how careful the enemy remained. They still avoid killing. A commander said, they push launches down. They cut power. They warn. But they don't burn cities. Captain Lena Reyes leaned over the map, eyes fixed on the space between Earth and the moon. They don't want rubble, she said. They want control. Mira nodded slowly, and control needs stability. Reyes pointed at the model of the ring. A stable fence needs anchors, she said. A stable system needs rules. We don't have to outgun them. We have to make their rules costly. That was the heart of the next stage. Not a big battle, a forced choice. For days, Earth continued fog drops. Not too many. Not enough to look like panic. Enough to keep the ring's sensors working harder than they wanted. The dust veils drifted in lanes that interfered with clean tracking, like smoke in a hallway. Then Needle began in full. Needle drones were not launched from spaceports. They did not rise with bright flames and clear heat. They came from places. The ring did not watch the right way. From a desert plateau, an aircraft climbed high, almost silent, carrying a cluster of slender pods under its wings. From a hidden barge in the southern ocean, a tube opened and released another cluster. From a mountain valley, a rail system fired a pod like a stone from a sling. Each pod went up fast, using short gas bursts and simple guidance. Their bodies were coated to reduce heat. They were cheap, plain, and designed to be disposable. Above the clouds, the pods opened. Needles spilled out. At first, they looked like nothing on the ring's sensors, tiny moving dots in a sky full of noise from fog. The ring adjusted, tried to lock on, tried to classify the targets as debris or malfunction. The needles did not attack the ring's strongest parts. They attacked its eyes. They swarmed around sensor nodes and dropped small impact charges that cracked external plates. They fired cutters into exposed cables. They released short bursts of interference that made skin beams stutter. When the ring tried to pulse them dead, many of them simply went dark and drifted, still useful as moving clutter. In a control room, far away, a technician whispered, "They're like gnats." Mira heard the report and felt a strange relief. Gnats could not kill a bear, but they could make it miserable. They could make it move. On the third day of needle strikes, the ring changed posture again. A section of the blockade shifted lower, not by much, just enough to avoid some of the fog lanes and improve sensor coverage. But that small move mattered. Low orbit was more crowded, more chaotic, closer to air drag, closer to Earth's influence. "They're coming down," Mira said, voice tight. Reyes watched the motion and did not blink. "Good," she replied. "They think they are fixing a problem. They are walking into it." The next step was not aimed at the ring at all. It was aimed at what fed the ring, the larger alien ships. In higher orbit were not only observers. They were supply, command, and backup power. Mira's team had mapped their movement and found a repeating behavior. Every so often, a small transport craft moved between the big ships and the ring like a delivery truck. Those transports were careful. They moved in clean arcs, staying far from the dust veils. They carried something important. Mira did not know what. Fuel, parts, energy cells, data cores. But she knew one thing. The transports did not like uncertainty. They avoided it. So Earth built uncertainty into their path. Lantern shifted its signal, not too far, not too fast. A slow, believable move, like a hidden platform trying to reposition. The signature changed strength in a way that suggested power management, not random noise. The alien response was immediate. A larger ship turned more fully toward the signal. A transport craft adjusted its route to keep clear of the new scan. Focus, that was the opening in a dark stretch of space between Earth and the Moon. Far from human eyes, a new fog capsule released its dust at exactly the right time. The cloud drifted into the transport craft's adjusted lane. The craft did not crash. It did not explode. It simply slowed and turned, confused by sensor returns that did not match its maps. A needle swarm, waiting cold and silent, woke up. They did not hit the craft with a bomb. They wrapped it in interference like a blanket over a face. They attached small devices that clung to its hull and listened. Mira watched the data arrive from that swarm. It was not clear speech. It was not words. But it was structure, timing, and pattern. It was proof of a network. They have a central timing source, Mira said, pointing at the repeating pulses. A clock, a heartbeat that keeps the ring aligned. A commander asked, "Can we jam it?" Mira hesitated. "Maybe," she said, "but jamming is noisy. They will harden it." Reyes stepped closer. "That we don't jam," she said. "We steal." Mira looked at her. "Steal what?" "Their stability," Reyes replied. "Their timing, their control loop." The room went quiet again. The same kind of silence that had filled the bunker in part 1 when the idea first formed. Mira studied the pulses, the ring scan cycles, the transport craft's corrections. It all pointed to a hidden rule. The ring was not a loose wall. It was a synchronized machine, and synchronized machines had a weakness. If you shifted one part at the right moment, the whole shape could wobble. Earth did not need to destroy the ring piece by piece. That would take years and cost too much. Earth needed one clean cut, a cut that would force the enemy to choose between holding the blockade or saving their own fleet. Reyes ordered the next phase without raising her voice. "Move Lantern again," she said. "Make it look like a real threat. Make it look like we built a weapon behind their fence." A scientist frowned. "If we push too hard, they might strike Earth." Reyes nodded once. "That's the risk," she said. "So we don't threaten their pride. We threaten their system." Quietly, Mira understood. Pride made enemies angry. System threats made them move with fear. Over the next 48 hours, Lantern's signal grew stronger, then weaker, then stronger again, like a generator coming online. The pattern suggested human engineering, imperfect but rising. It suggested progress. The ring responded by shifting to more sections lower. The sensor nodes turned inward, scanning down toward the atmosphere as if hunting the source. And in higher orbit, one of the large alien ships began a slow descent. It did not rush, but it came closer than before, like a hand reaching to grab something. That was the moment Earth wanted. In the bunker, Mira's screen flashed a new warning. The alien ship had open bays along its side. Smaller craft moved inside, ready to deploy. Reyes looked at the display and spoke one short sentence. "They're coming to remove the problem." Mira's mouth went dry. "If they come lower," she said, "they come into our reach." A commander looked confused. "Our reach? We can't fight a ship like that." Reyes answered with calm certainty. "We don't fight the ship," she said. "We fight what the ship needs." Mira pointed at the timing pulses again. "The ring needs its anchor clock," she said. "If that clock is on the big ship," Reyes finished the thought, "then we make the big ship choose." She said, "Protect the clock or protect the fence." In the next hours, needle swarms repositioned in high-altitude drift paths. Fog veils were placed like curtains in narrow lanes. Submarines moved to new coordinates. Rail systems loaded new pods. Everything small, everything quiet, everything ready. The battlefield was no longer space in the heroic sense. It was a moving geometry of attention, timing, and fear. Above Earth, the ring lowered again, trying to see better, trying to keep control, trying to keep humans in their place. And the alien ship descended toward the lantern signal, confident that it was coming to fix a small problem. It did not yet understand that Earth had not tried to climb over the blockade. Earth had pulled the blockade down into a trap built from dust, insects, and human patience. Mira watched the alien ship cross an invisible line on her screen, a line she had drawn herself with simple math and long nights. She whispered to herself, not as a prayer, but as a truth. "Now you're in the battlefield." Reyes heard her and gave one small nod. Then she gave the order that would decide the war. "Begin the anchor operation." The alien ship kept descending, slow and controlled, as if the space around Earth belonged to it by default. The ring below it shifted again, tightening its scan beams toward the lantern's signal. The blockade had become a living machine, adjusting and breathing, trying to restore a clean picture of the sky dot in the bunker. Mira Cole watched the timing pulses scroll across her screen like a heartbeat. She had seen many systems in her life. Human systems failed loudly. They failed with heat, smoke, and panic. This alien system failed differently. It failed by resisting change until change became too large to ignore. Captain Lena Reyes stood behind her, hands resting on the edge of the table. Her voice was quiet, but everyone heard it. Anchor operation is active, she said. Far above the atmosphere. Needles drifted like dead specks in the dark, their power low, their bodies cold. They did not look like weapons. They looked like trash. That was the point. Fog veils floated in thin sheets across selected lanes, not thick enough to stop a ship, but thick enough to turn perfect sensor returns into guesses. Lantern kept whispering. The false signal pulsed with imperfect human rhythm, as if a secret platform was charging up something dangerous. It was not a challenge. It was a temptation. It said, "Come fix this." It said, "Come close." The descending alien ship answered with action. Smaller craft poured from its bays, sleek and fast. They moved toward the lantern source in clean formations, scanning, probing, searching for the problem. They were careful, not angry. They treated Earth like a trapped animal that might still bite. Mira's screen flashed. "The clock pulse is stronger," she said. "The anchor is nearby. It's not the ring itself. It's coming from the big ship." Reyes nodded once. "That's our lever." A commander swallowed hard. "How do we touch it?" Reyes did not look away from the screen. "We don't punch it," she said. "We slip something into its hand." That was the part most people struggled to accept. Earth could not match alien armor or alien firepower. Earth had no battleship waiting in the dark. Earth had only small tools, cheap tools, and timing. Mira zoomed in on the intercepted patterns that the needles had recorded from the transport craft. The pulses were consistent. They were not random. They were a system of alignment, a rule that kept the ring steady. If the ring lost that rule, even for minutes, its perfect spacing would wobble. The fence would become a net with holes. Mira's hands tightened around a pen. "Their command core is using timing and gravity mapping," she said. "The ring holds position because the core predicts drift before it happens and corrects it." A scientist asked, "Can we break the core?" Mira shook her head. "Breaking is loud. It invites retaliation." Reyes leaned in. "Then we don't break," she said. "We borrow it." Mira looked up. "Borrow?" Reyes pointed at the lower parts of the ring that had come closer to Earth. "They moved down to see better," she said. "That means their system is already working harder than it wants. If we push their timing slightly off, the ring will try to correct. It will follow the clock." The room understood slowly, like a door opening 1 inch at a time. "You want to steer the blockade," the commander said. Reyes' eyes stayed calm. "I want to make it steer itself," she replied. The first step was simple and ugly. Needle swarms woke up. They did not rush the big ship. They did not attack its hull. They moved into the fog lanes around the smaller alien craft, swarming their sensor edges, forcing the scouts to report uncertain data. The scouts reacted by tightening their own formations, sending more skin pulses, demanding more timing corrections from the command core. The alien ship responded like a brain under stress. Its anchor pulse grew sharper, stronger, more frequent. It was trying to keep control. Mira's team had prepared for that. Deep under the ocean, in a sealed room inside a submarine, a device sat inside a shock cradle. It was not a bomb. It was a timing injector built from stolen patterns and human stubbornness. It could not speak the alien language, but it could imitate the alien clock's rhythm just enough to be believed for a moment. Not forever, just long enough. Rey's voice came over a tight channel. "Injector ready?" A submarine officer replied, "Ready. Send it." Reyes said, "The injector did not launch like a rocket. It rose like fog capsules had risen, quiet and clean, using gas and silence instead of fire. It climbed through thin air and into the edge of space, wrapped in a heat shield skin that kept its signature small. The ring noticed it late. A skin beat, swept, faltered in fog noise, swept again. The injector reached its planned position, close enough to hear the anchor pulse and match it. Then it emitted a reply. Not a message, not words, just a faint echo in the same timing style. On Mira's screen, the heartbeat line split for a moment into nearly identical pulses. Her breath caught. "It's working," she whispered. For a few seconds, the ring did not know which pulse was the true anchor. It tried to blend them, average them, correct for them. The system did what smart systems do when faced with uncertainty. It tried to stabilize. That attempt was a crack. The injector nudged the timing by a tiny fraction. So small a human would call it nothing. But the ring's geometry was huge. Small timing changes over a global circle became large position errors fast. The ring began to drift, not falling, not breaking apart, drifting sideways, like a belt sliding around a moving wheel. The alien ship sensed it and tried to stop it. The anchor pulse spiked again, and the ring's nodes fired correction bursts. But those corrections were now chasing. The clocks. Mira saw the result first in numbers. She did not need pictures. "The spacing is changing," she said. "They're losing their perfect distance." Ray's voice did not rise. "Push stage 2. Stage 2 was the human answer to every giant problem. Many small hits in the right place. Needles swarmed towards specific nodes that were already strained by correction work. They dropped cutters and microcharges, not to destroy, but to slow. Each slowed node forced nearby nodes to work harder. Each harder working node asked the anchor for more correction. Each request increased the system's stress. The ring's perfect shape began to ripple in the sky. People in cities saw it as a faint moving line that no longer stayed still against the stars. It seemed to shift, like a halo slipping on ahead. The quarantine message came again, but it was no longer calm. "Earth, stop, stop, stop." The voice repeated the command quickly, as if the system itself had become anxious. In the bunker, Mira felt a strange pity for the machine. It was powerful, but it was not wise. It had been built to contain a weaker species. It had not been built to handle a species that treated rules like puzzle pieces above Earth. The descending alien ship changed behavior for the first time in a way that looked like fear. It stopped its descent. Then it rose slightly, trying to regain safe distance. But rising meant pulling resources away from the ring. It meant losing close skin coverage. It meant losing control over the smaller craft near Lantern. The ship hesitated, caught between the problems, the false threat below and the real instability. Inside its own blockade, Reyes watched the hesitation on the screen and spoke to the room. "That's the choice," she said. "Protect the fence or protect the fleet." The alien ship chose itself. It issued a burst command. The smaller craft peeled away from Lantern and turned back toward the ring, trying to help stabilize nodes that were drifting out of alignment. The ring attempted a hard correction. That hard correction was exactly what Earth wanted. The injector nudged again, tiny and precise. The ring's correction became a mistake. A long section of the blockade slid into a dense fog lane and lost clean tracking of its neighbors. Two clusters drew closer than intended, not touching, not colliding, but close enough that their skin beams interfered with each other. Their own systems began to argue. For one brief moment, the perfect net became an imperfect net. And an imperfect net has holes. Reyes lifted her chin. "Open the sky corridor," she said, from a hidden mountain site. A single launch finally occurred. It was the first true rocket since the blockade began. It was small, cheap, and fast. It rose straight toward the hole that only existed because the ring was correcting a correction. Of a correction, the ring tried to pulse it dead, but the pulse timing was out of step. The rocket passed through. It did not carry a warhead. It carried a beacon that said, "Earth is back in space." The alien ship reacted instantly. A bright flare of energy rippled across the ring, and for a second the night side of the planet flashed with thin lines of light. The enemy could have escalated. It could have punished Earth in ways humans could not stop. It did not. Instead, the larger ships began to withdraw, pulling up and away, widening distance like someone stepping back from a trap they almost fell into. The quarantine broadcast returned one last time, now colder than before. "Earth, your behavior is hostile." In the bunker, people waited for Reyes to respond with anger. She did not. She looked at Mira. "Send the reply," she said. Mira's hands moved over the console. Earth's answer was not a threat. It was a fact, shaped into simple words. The message went out through every band the aliens had used. "This was your fence," it said. "We did not break it with force. We broke it with thinking. If you fence our sky, we will move the fight to your rules. Then we will change the rules." There was a pause. Then the ring's remaining nodes slowly pulled higher, drifting back toward safer distances. Abandoning the low orbit positions they had taken, the blockade did not vanish, but it loosened. The tight collar became a wide perimeter, enough for Earth to breathe, enough for Earth to rebuild. Over the next days, more small launches slipped through the shifting gaps, not to attack, not to chase the retreating fleet, but to restore what had been stolen: communication, weather, navigation, and the simple freedom to reach upward. People on the ground saw new lights moving across the sky and felt something they had not felt since the ring appeared. Not relief, pride, because the enemy had arrived with certainty in a perfect machine, and humans had answered with dust, insects, oceans, math, and patience. Mira stepped out of the bunker one night and looked up. The ring was still there, but it was farther now, less confident, more careful. Stars returned between the gaps. Rhea stood beside her, silent for a moment, then spoke softly. "They thought space was the high ground," she said. Mira nodded. "They forgot the mind is higher." She replied, "Above them." Earth's first new satellite in weeks sent a clean signal down to the world. And far beyond the thinning blockade, the alien ships kept retreating, not defeated by a bigger gun, but warned by a simple human truth. You can blockade a planet. You cannot blockade what humans become when they refuse to kneel.